Hello, my friends. Welcome to Leadership Synergized, where we explore purpose, impact, and the people who bring both to life through leadership. I'm your host, Kevin Smith. Today, we're honored to be joined by Dr. Tracy Lorey, Superintendent of the Greater Jasper Community School Corporation located in Southern Indiana. With more than 3 decades of experience as an educator and a leader, Dr. Lorey brings a servant's heart, a systems-level mindset, and a deep commitment to students, families, staff, and her school community. In this episode, she shares powerful insights on staying true to mission, leading with humility, and cultivating a shared vision that empowers others to thrive. Let's dive in. Today, and welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Synergized. I'm your host, Kevin Smith, and we're joined today by Dr. Tracy Lorey, the school superintendent at Greater Jasper Community Schools. Thank you again for being with us. And as we speak with Dr. Tracy Lorey, Dr. Lorey, the last still in the still mindset model framework for life and leadership significance is about the word leading. And one of the challenges, and I go back to John Maxwell again, and for those watching this who may not realize where Dr. Lorey is sitting now is less than a 20-minute drive to the church in Hillham, Indiana that Dr. Maxwell launched in the early 1970s in that setting. So there's some dotted line connections, and I think you probably, for those of you watching, are aware that Dr. Maxwell, if you follow him as I do, talks about having a stake in Jasper from time to time. So in his early years, there was some formation in that regard. But Dr. Lorey, one of the it's really a challenge, but it's so very true. To be an effective, long-lasting, sustaining leader, you must be able to lead yourself first and foremost before you can really lead others. When you hear that statement and you think about school district leaders today, how do you interpret that, and do you agree with that, and in what ways have you seen it, or have you lived that out and found it to be true?
Yeah, I think when you think about leading yourself, the first thing that comes to mind is that you might wear your wife hat or your daughter hat or your mother hat or your grandmother hat, but you can never take off your educator hat. And when you think about leading yourself, I think that means leading a life that you would be proud to show that you are an educator. And so I think you have to always know that you are setting the example for others. And so whether it's in your word or your deeds, I think you have to constantly understand that you must lead yourself in word and deed in a way that represents yourself, that represents your vocation, and represents the organization and the community that you serve. And if you cannot do that in a way that sets up the kind of example that others would want to emulate, then it's probably time to move on to something different. So when I think about leading self, that's what comes to mind.
I love that. And, the value that we hope this programming brings to anyone and everyone is just a chance to have a thought come into your mind for reflection. And I've had so many during our time with Dr. Lorey in these past several episodes. And Dr. Lorey, what really jumped out at me is just going back to the 1800s, Horace Mann, and when education was started to be formalized, and so much legacy in almost those nearly 200 plus years. And sometimes I think, because, and I don't necessarily like this aspect, but society in general at times devalues the value of education in our world today. And I think that's a shame. But our educators today, you being one of them certainly, are continuing a legacy that has been developed unlike any other legacy in our time or in the time of mankind. And said another way, your staff members, your instructors, are building and continuing that legacy forward. Doesn't matter if it once was a Pony Express on the horseback, or if it was email or a text in today's world. That legacy is something that without it, none of us would be standing on today.
You're exactly right. I oftentimes I think as much as the world has changed and as much as our educational system has evolved, it has stayed very much the same. We're still talking about the same issues that our predecessors were 100 years ago. But with that being said, we are preparing our students for a very different world than Horace Mann was preparing the students in his day and age. And I think part of the challenge of being a teacher today is knowing that you're preparing students for something that we don't even know exists at this time. And so then what are the skills and knowledge that we have to prioritize in order to help our students have the foundation and the resiliency enough to encounter and achieve in areas that we don't even know exist. And so I think that's why in this day and age we're starting to see so much focus on like work ethic attributes of a student and things and attributes that help them not just in a niche of algebra 1 or Spanish, but that they can take with them as a part of who they are as a learner, as a consumer, as a key individual in our communities in the future and and transform their lives using what that foundation has been. And so I think as we think about what we're preparing our students for the future, it's important to understand, yes, this content knowledge is important, but we are part of molding them as an individual who will take those lessons and apply them for the rest of their lives.
I love that point and direction. And Dr. Lorey, going back 40 or 50 years, probably the utilization of data was something that really wasn't digested as much as maybe it should have been, right? So here comes this push, not only in education, but other industries, manufacturing, medical, Demings and the quality systems he helped put into place in Japan and then brought them into America. But sometimes I step back and wonder, have we went from more of the intent of being data driven to data consumed today, and we lose out on those opportunities you're describing? Because I tell you what I'm interpreting, and I, God bless you, I appreciate the value of reflection you put on my mind, is what you're describing is we're helping those students and focused on helping those students not only from the tactical or technical knowledge gains, but to begin to understand the values that they currently have and want to develop and where they might be able to build those values and utilize them with.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is a more technical term would be stackable credentials. These are credentials or attributes that we hope that students can apply in their lives that will make them ready to make good decisions, make choices, have various careers throughout their lifetime. Um, and those stackable credentials or stackable attributes are important. The data is important. I mean, obviously, we use a student's performance data as a measure of our work to ensure that they've gained a level set of knowledge. But it's one measure of a student's success in life, and it's not the only measure. I always, this time of year, we always get iLearn results that come back, and I won't dive into that, but we always are concerned about whether or not the student passed the proficiency of iLearn. And then we're looking at the amount of growth that they made from one year to the next. And all those pieces are important because they're going to help drive our decisions about what interventions we're going to provide, what kind of support programs do we need to put in place. But that's only one piece. There are so many other pieces of information about a student outside of just that also drive the way we want to support our students moving forward. And so I often say, I wonder how many of our students who left us and are now in their 30s are still concerned about whether or not they passed an iLearn or they had a particular data point on a data set. And I'd say none. And I would say they're all very living life as productive adults in our communities and giving back to their communities.
Just to build a little bit on what you just said, in our community, Jasper, Indiana, and I know as you stated, other communities could say the same thing. We don't talk about this near enough. We analyze things like we're kind of doing with some of our Q&A. But we have some outstanding young men and women in our community today that are leaders well above many other leaders that I've experienced in my life. And I've experienced a lot of good ones, and I'm not putting them down. What I mean when I state that is they kind of connect and get where this world's currently at, and they're broadening just exactly what you're talking about in those stackable credentials with everyone they meet.
Mhm. I think partnerships with local business and industry and shifts in just the educational system in the state in and of itself have really helped to foster that. The drive for workforce, whatever that workforce need may be, is also a factor in that. And I think the partnerships that we have we have begun having over the last few years and blurring the lines between school and business and other community entities, where we all know that collectively we share the responsibility of producing that next generation of citizen that will help lead our communities, has really helped shape what you're describing. And that's been of great value, I think. Of all the things, I think that is of value in knowing that we all have a shared responsibility in ensuring that next generation is prepared to become vitally important citizens in our communities.
And I think you just probably made the most valuable point when we step back in this world and consider our educational system. There's been too long of a window of time to where everything was siloed out. Education stood alone, manufacturing, medical, government stood alone, and all these fingers and arrows were pointed in that aspect. And we need all those silos to become Venn diagram scenarios, just as you're describing in that piece. And that's what makes it whole. And I will go a step further. Throughout the past 20 or 30 years, there's been more of a prevalence with school safety. Obviously, some very tragic things have taken place, and things we all wish and pray would never have happened. I believe that until we all see that the safety of each and every child, whether located in Jasper, Indiana, or Uvalde, Texas, or in California, that's my child just as much as it is anyone else's child. That's really the success of being an educator that you've described, Dr. Laura. And I commend you and the board and your staff and how you brought that philosophy not only in words but in execution. Because I think the one thing as a leader, and you probably have experienced this too many times in this world, we talk about things and we seem so satisfied, but yet there's never any action behind that in that piece. And I really believe that living in the community and being on the peripheral my entire life, you and what this community has done has lived the talk probably as well as anyone I've experienced. So I congratulate you on that.
Well, and I appreciate that. And I will just say what you describe is what is a collective team effort and everyone collectively sharing the responsibility. And I think that that is one of the things that doesn't only make Jasper stand out, but I think Du Bois County in
Hmm.
general, we all share the same values. I think we, as a county, we share the same goals and objectives for our communities. And I think because of that, and a willingness to work together instead of compete,
Hmm.
really creates a scenario where we all work for a common good. We all work for a common vision of success, and we're all very proud of that and want that for our our children and our communities. And because we manage in that fashion, I think that's why you see the positive outcomes that you do, not only in our schools but across the county.
Well, I like that because what you just said again is that everyone in the county, to your point, and what's making it successful, really understands it's not about them, it's about everyone else in that setting. And that's where everything starts with successful leadership, in my viewpoint. And Dr. Lorey, with that said, but before I let you go, let's build a little bit. You've had a great career. You're making and have made a difference. What's a lesson learned that you've had that you might share for individuals maybe just looking to get started in leadership, considering or moving into their first administrative role?
Mhm. I'm going to go back to relationships. You can never underestimate the power of any relationship that you form. Um, you can learn something from everyone. You sometimes they are lessons that are things that you will take away as an individual, as a leader, that you internalize and say, that's who I want to be. And sometimes it's just the opposite. You take that relationship or that encounter and you say, boy, I can respect that, but that is not who I am as a human being at my core. And so I think it's important to never underestimate any relationship that you encounter, and to take something away from that each and every time, good and bad, because I think then you go back to what we talked about, I think, many episodes before this, and that is staying true to who you are as a person. Um, if you cannot stay true to yourself, you will not find that your purpose is fulfilling, and that what you are hoping to give back to this world is going to make that difference.
Let's foreshadow a little bit. As we record this episode, you're just a few weeks away from the start of the 2025-26 school year. When you foreshadow Tracy Lorey in June of 2026 and reflect back on the school year that was, what will tell you whether or not the end in mind was achieved, the success, the significance that you hoped would have been done district wide would have been achieved?
Mhm. That's a good question. Um, I when we think about on an outcome like data outcome, when we when our students walk across the stage at our commencement exercise and we celebrate their achievement of completing their education here at Jasper, the success for me is knowing that through the continuum, from the time they entered us through when we hand them that diploma and they turn their tassel, that we have prepared them for whatever their personal next step is going to be, whether they're going to enroll, whether they're going to employment, or they're going to enlist in one of our armed services. I feel like we are celebrating the fact that we've done a good job and they are ready to move on to that next phase prepared. And to me, that's the culmination of the work of every single employee in this district.
Well said. I love that. So let me shift gears a bit and just have you reflect on Dr. Lorey. What's next for your growth or your focal aspect to continue to move forward with that path of being the leader, becoming the leader that your values say you want to be?
Um, I will go back to the fact that I myself believe that I'm a lifelong learner, and I will continue to learn each and every day about what is working, what is not working. I will continue to learn about innovations that maybe should be considered or not considered, excuse me. Um, and so I think the most important part of any leadership position and any individual is just to consider what you must continue to learn, and then taking that learning and applying it to your life. And so I think as I move forward, I want to continue to grow my knowledge and understanding of educational trends, of initiatives, of the things that may move the needle for our students in terms of their achievement and their growth. And the only way to do that is for you as a leader to continue to learn and grow so that you can then bring that back to the rest of your team for consideration as we decide what our vision is moving forward.
Thank you, my friend. Any other words of advice or thoughts that you wanted to make sure you got out before we adjourn this session?
Just so grateful for the opportunity to talk education with you, Kevin. I, I education has been near and dear to my heart for a very long time, and I love what I do, and I love the people that I serve, and I love our community, and I hope that that will continue to shine through in the work that we do for our kids.
Well, Dr. Lorey, my friend, thank you again for being with us. And you alluded earlier about people being in our life, maybe for a long time, maybe for a short time. And there's a purpose for that, that many times in the moment we may not understand, may never understand in that piece. But the one thing that stands out that I'm certain of, and God's sending this message, is that you are the person that God meant for this community, and this community is the community that God meant for you. I love the energy you provide. This community provides you and the entire school support. I sense that, and this community senses that in your staff. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I pray that you have a wonderful school year. And just God bless you, and I appreciate you for all you do, my friend.
Thank you, and right back at you.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for watching. And I hope you've got more than one thought going now, because there's been a great deal of wisdom shared by this wonderful leader that you see on the screen. God bless. My friends, thank you so much for joining us on Leadership Synergized. Dr. Tracy Lorey reminded us today that leadership at its best is humble, focused, and always grounded in service. If you found value in this conversation, please subscribe, share this episode, and reflect on how you, too, can lead with integrity, intention, right where you are. Until next time, stay inspired and keep leading well.